Right now on the National Weather Desk, as we watch for a possible new storm in the Caribbean, we'll look ahead to what the last month of hurricane season could be like.
Now, we usually see tropical entities form in the Caribbean, Western Atlantic, or the Central Atlantic in November.
The unexpected danger that's lurking in communities cleaning up from recent hurricanes.
Warm, dark places are great for snakes.
We'll look back on the anniversaries of two monumental weather events, Superstorm Sandy and the so-called perfect storm 33 years ago.
They were in an area where things degraded very, very, very quickly.
Do you know how to stay out of danger when you hydroplane while driving? And why does the sky turn red during those magnificent sunsets?
From our nation's capital, this is the National Weather Desk.
Good morning and welcome to the National Weather Desk. I'm Janae Bowens. Now, with just over 1 month left in hurricane season, we are once again tracking a possible storm in the tropics. It's a disturbance in the southwest Caribbean Sea between Jamaica and South America. The National Hurricane Center says it has a 40% chance of developing into a storm over the next week. Now, if that happens, it would be named Patty, but it's still too early to know what land, if any, might be impacted. Meteorologist Jenna Warner has more on what we could see.
Well, we are well past the peak of hurricane season now, ending towards the end of October into the beginning of November, just around the corner. And usually for November, hurricane season is not super active. Given the graph, we do not see too much activity, some in the beginning of November. And then, of course, hurricane season ends December 1st. Now, we usually see tropical entities form in the Caribbean, Western Atlantic, or the Central Atlantic in November. And the good news is, too, most of the path that those tropical entities take is to the north and northeast, which takes them away from the continental U.S. Now, there are some reasons for these areas, and most of it is just what we call a wall of wind shear. So this big red area does break apart any tropical entities. They will struggle forming with wind shear. Wind shear is not a friend to tropical entities, but low wind shear is a friend to tropical entities. And we see some low wind shear in the Caribbean, which is why that is a hot spot, as well as the Western Atlantic and the Central Atlantic. The other good news for the continental U.S., we have frontal systems sweeping across the continental U.S., keeping tropical systems away or sweeping them away. But we have seen a few landfalling systems in November for the continental U.S., most of those being in Florida, but the Carolinas have seen one that was back in 1861 with the Expedition hurricane. That was a Category 1 storm that made landfall on Cape Lookout that long ago. Usually Florida is the one to see tropical systems in November, the last being Nicole in 2022.
Now, with all the mounds of debris needing cleanup after recent hurricanes and tornadoes, there's an unexpected danger. Dylan Huberman tells us about the belly-crawling risk lurking in the piles.
This is a coral snake, venomous and life-threatening, spotted in Martin County last week.
They're rarely seen. We don't really see the venomous ones. They don't want to be seen by us. They don't want to be bothered by us. They're doing their thing.
So why are we seeing them now? Animal Control Officer Amanda Heffron says the piles of debris from the recent storm are to blame.
Everybody trying to clear their properties of the vegetation and of the material damage from their homes. So warm, dark places are great for snakes specifically, because their prey goes there and they follow them.
Heffron was called out to take care of this coral snake in Port Salerno last Thursday. But that wasn't the only snake she had to wrangle that day.
It was one of the biggest ones I've ever seen. And later on in the day was a 1.5 foot long diamondback rattlesnake that was hanging out right under the slider on the patio of a home with children and pets inside. It's got to go. It can't stay there. It's not safe.
That one was in Palm City. She says both of those snakes emerged from piles of debris, and they likely won't be the last to do so, given the ongoing cleanup and the extensive time required for debris pickup around the county. Heffron advised not getting too close to these debris piles, with the snakes potentially lurking within.
Don't be on your phone when you're walking your dog, so that way you can be aware. We have all kinds of wildlife around us, especially the coyotes and the bobcats. It's not just snakes. So everything's on the move. With the growth and development, everything is chasing their prey, because their prey is being chased away from their homes.
Now, today marks 12 years since Superstorm Sandy struck the New Jersey coast, bringing historic flooding to both the Garden State and New York City. It was the largest Atlantic hurricane on record, measuring more than 1,000 miles wide. Emily Gracie spoke with John Cangelosi with the National Hurricane Center, who says things started to get unusual after the hurricane passed over the Bahamas.
The most atypical part of Sandy's life is really its last chapter. It was generally projected to head up the East Coast. And then it was kind of confusing if the storm would make a right turn and head out to sea, as most storms do, go straight north into New England, or make this atypical left turn into the mid-Atlantic or portions of the Northeast. And Sandy did the last one, as you all know. It took this left turn, and that's what really caused Sandy to be so devastating.
So where did it make landfall, and what were the impacts like there?
So officially, it made landfall in southern New Jersey. That's where the center came ashore. And the impacts were generally close to where it made landfall, and then to the right or to the north in this particular circumstance. The most classic impacts from Sandy was the coastal flooding. If you looked at the wind impacts, they were there, but surge was the reason this storm was so devastating.
So what did we learn from Sandy? What did you guys learn from Sandy? I'm guessing over the past 10 years, the way that information is put out there has changed a little bit. Given the fact that it wasn't a hurricane at landfall, how do you warn people? Are there things in place that allow you to still put out warnings and watches and all the same sort of communication that you do with a hurricane?
There was a sort of a flaw in the system at the time. So post Sandy, we're able to issue hurricane warnings, even if we don't think it'll be a hurricane or tropical when it makes landfall. And we've done this several times now. And we do now issue storm surge warnings, which are connected to the most life-threatening hazard, which we could not or did not have in place at the time. And all of this was, at least it began because of Sandy. It was so high profile, so impactful, that this changed the way we do business today, and certainly for the better.
And coming up in about 6 minutes, we'll look back on the 33rd anniversary of the so-called perfect storm, which inspired that blockbuster movie. Now turning to Texas, where the ongoing lack of rain is prompting some cities to increase their drought restrictions in hopes of conserving more water. Jamal Kennedy reports on the impact to residents.
I would definitely say things are serious at this point.
Stage 3 water restrictions are now in place in the city of San Marcos. City Utilities Conservation Coordinator Jan De La Cruz says there are a few reasons for the move. The first deals with their water sources.
Canyon Lake is only at 53% capacity. That's a historic low. The Edwards Aquifer is also at extremely low levels.
Utilities Director Tyler Yorth says the city's diverse water supply systems should be a strong suit.
It lets us consider some other aspects of both our drought response and our contingency planning.
But De La Cruz says increased water use among residents this time of year and the absence of rainfall have pushed the envelope.
We haven't had, I think, any measurable rain in like 2 months here in San Marcos.
San Marcos joins the city of Kyle in declaring stage 3 drought restrictions, while Buda is currently under stage 2 restrictions. Under stage 3 restrictions, people in San Marcos are limited to watering their lawns once every other week, among other things. De La Cruz says it's likely these restrictions will remain in place through winter.
They're predicting that we're going to have a La Nina winter, which usually means drier conditions for us. So we're not super optimistic.
Now, lack of precipitation isn't just a problem in Texas. November is just a few days away, and Japan's iconic Mount Fuji remains snowless. The peak of Japan's highest mountain is usually dusted in snow by early October. This is file of what it looks like when there is snow. Now, this is the latest date without a snow cap on the mountain since records began 130 years ago. And check this out. The world's largest digital camera will let us see the night sky like never before. This is the 3,200 megapixel camera being installed at Chile's Vera Rubin Observatory. Now, it will capture ultra-detailed images of the entire visible sky. Over the next decade, astronomers expect over the years to discover billions of stars, galaxies, and celestial objects. The telescope is now in the final stages of construction and is expected to be turned on next year. And coming up on the National Weather Desk, a look at the weather ingredients that all came together to create the so-called perfect storm. Plus, a look at the dangers of driving in wet weather and ways you can protect yourself.
I'm meteorologist Charlie Lopresti with Look at the Northeast. We have a chilly air mass in place to start your Tuesday. The general trend will be for increasing and thickening clouds today. Temperatures today are going to struggle to get out of the 50s. A few spots may make into the 60s through southern New York and northern New Jersey. Along a warm front, expect a round of wet weather. That will be late today and tonight. That's going to move east of our region on Wednesday. That's going to allow the warmer air to invade. For Wednesday and Thursday, look for temperatures to surge into the 70s. Enjoy.
I'm Chief Meteorologist Gerard Jabali. Here's a look at the Mid-Atlantic region. We are nice and dry through your Tuesday, Wednesday, and even into Halloween. We are not expecting any rain, just a few passing clouds here and there. But a front will approach and knock your temperatures back and bring a chance of rain by Friday. Otherwise, expect a warm-up. Temperatures are going to get close to 70 degrees for your afternoon on Tuesday, but going into Wednesday, we'll be flirting with 80 degrees closer to the coast. In the mountains, we'll be in the low 70s.
Good morning, I'm meteorologist Charlotte Carl. High temperatures this afternoon are going to be in the mid-80s for the most part. We have the lower 70s up in the Carolinas and Georgia. High pressure is going to keep most of the area quiet in terms of your weather for the day today. A few passing clouds here and there. Coastal showers to start off your day along the Florida Peninsula, East Coast, and also the East Coast of South Carolina, Georgia, and North Carolina. Besides that, again, high pressure keeps conditions quiet through about midweek.
Weather Window, presented by the National Weather Desk.
Nothing starts the day off like a bright and vibrant sunrise. This from Providence, Rhode Island, to the Tennessee mountains. These donkeys enjoying the morning munchies along with a blazing daybreak in western Montana. A deer checks out fall foliage in Seattle, and this tree was photographed in Syracuse just because it's pretty.
Listen to Off the Radar, new episodes every Tuesday. Find it wherever you get your podcasts.
Now, 33 years ago, Hurricane Grace was spinning off the New England coast with no landfall threat. But another storm system formed and absorbed Grace's moisture, becoming a monster storm that caused catastrophic damage up and down the East Coast. It would later become known as the perfect storm. Emily Gracie sat down with one of the meteorologists that forecasted the storm back in 1991 to find out what made it unique and dangerous.
Grace existed before the perfect storm, the Sable Island storm, developed. Grace was moving to the northeast. And as the Sable Island storm intensified and a cold air pushed southward, there was increasing southwesterly flow in advance of that front. So Grace accelerated to the northeast. So you had a storm that was this large developed a hurricane in its center that was relatively small. But it was actually measured by an Air Force a hurricane hunter. It had 80 knots of wind. Wow. Small, short-lived, but basically in a cold air mass was a warm core system with an eye. So
today this would have been named, do you think?
Yes, and it actually, if you go back in the records, you will see the track is there. It is listed as an unnamed storm for 1991, and it would have been en route.
I'm curious, as somebody who lived this and saw every aspect of this storm, what you thought about the book.
I think he did a good job in some ways because he took the context, and had that and built the story around that. So I think he did a fairly good job. The phrase "perfect storm" is actually was the deputy at the Boston Forecast Office, Bob Case, came up with that. Because of the evolution that things had to come together in a certain way in order for this massive storm to develop, and he used the word perfect, and that's where it came from, and it stuck. I have looked at buoy data and all from, to kind of in my own mind as to how, with the evolution of things and how severe. There was one of the Canadian Nomad buoys was full 137, if I remember right, was in the relative vicinity of Andrea Gale. They were in an area where things degraded very, very, very quickly.
Now, to hear a detailed account of the evolution of this storm, make sure to check out this week's episode of our podcast, Off the Radar. Joe will address the accuracy of the movie, The Perfect Storm, and discuss how forecasting has changed since 1991. Find Off the Radar anywhere you listen to podcasts. A new program hopes to educate visitors of the Texas Panhandle on the effects of erosion. Drew Powell reports the problem is nothing new, but as weather patterns change, the impacts could get worse.
The erosion here is a problem pretty much year-round. If it's not the water, it is the wind that is causing a lot of erosion.
After closely analyzing erosion over the last couple of years here at Paladuro Canyon State Park, some of the rivers and creeks inside the park are now flowing differently. As a result of that change, it's leading to more campsites being flooded throughout the year.
At the end of the day, this is a drainage for most of the water that's here. And so it all comes down here, and we have to make sure that everything's clear, the trails are maintained.
And that program talks about some of the layers we have here in the canyon. A lot of it is sandstone, caliche, and then we have the quartermaster layer, which is made up of silts and sand mixture with some shale in it.
As the winter months are approaching, the Building Up Tearing Down program will be happening more frequently, provided we have more rain and snow over the next couple of months.
Now, erosion is just one of the many issues water can create. When the weather turns wet, hydroplaning is a risk for drivers. Sarah Bagby spoke with an expert to find out how to stay safe if this happens.
As the rain increases, so do the risks for drivers.
Hydroplaning occurs when vehicles, the tires lose contact with the road and instead are driving on a layer of water, whether that's from wet pavement or standing water. It can cause drivers to not just lose steering, but also may control their braking.
We spoke with Mindy McCart with ODOT to learn how to prevent these accidents.
Brakes are very, very important after driving through a puddle. Check that your brakes are working properly by tapping them gently a few times when you're driving. Make sure your tires are in good condition and they are recommended inflation level.
Here's what to do before we drive. Clean and check your windshield wipers. Test your brakes, and check your tire tread and air pressure. Once prepared, how do we stay safe when we are behind the wheel? McCart says don't use cruise control in extremely wet conditions. Leave extra space between you and the car in front of you, and slow down. But how about that moment we feel our tires levitating from the road? Here's what to do. Take your foot off the gas immediately. Do not brake. Do not attempt to steer in a different direction. If you drive a stick shift, keep the clutch pressed to the floor until the hydroplaning is over.
A piece of weather folklore says a worm can predict whether winter will be bad. But is there any truth to this idea? Meteorologist Darren Leeds lets us know.
This is the woolly bear caterpillar, also referred to as the woolly worm. According to weather folklore, these little guys can predict what kind of conditions we can expect for the upcoming winter season.
Winter is a very harsh time for humans. You have devastating snows, and you want to know what to expect. Humans always want to know what to expect, but they're also afraid of change and that special word, the future. And so we try to find something that can give us an idea.
The woolly worm is recognized by its brown midsection and black ends. And the legend goes, the bigger the brown sections are on the woolly worm, then the more mild our winter season will be. The more black coloring they exhibit suggests that winter will be more severe.
When the caterpillar is actually born, it's in midsummer. And so it's responding to what conditions there were for the summer and during its lifespan. So there's no way that it can really tell us what to expect in the future months.
The fact of the matter is the caterpillar's colors have nothing to do with what kind of weather to expect for the coming winter. Instead, their coloring is determined by environmental factors that it is currently going through.
Trust your scientists. I mean, that's the important thing. They do know what they're doing. And if they've been trained well, then they're going to give you the most accurate information possible.
And time now for a short break, but first we soar over Baltimore, Maryland's Lake Roland and take in views of the changing leaves.
Well, a very good Tuesday morning, everyone. I'm meteorologist Andrew Buckmichael. Have some rain across the northern plains, but a lot of the Midwest pretty dry for the day today. Also a little bit of rain across the Great Lakes. That rain continues to move its way to the east as we go through your Wednesday. And by the time that we get to Thursday, which is Halloween, we've got rain across a lot of the Great Lakes, including the Ohio Valley and maybe even a little bit of snow in northern Wisconsin.
Well, good Tuesday morning to you. I'm meteorologist Chris Suchan. Look at our forecast today across the region. We are seeing very humid conditions spreading off the Gulf into Texas and Oklahoma with clouds, a few sprinkles, mist, a couple of showers through the day. Mostly to partly sunny, a little windy. Highs again still into the 80s. Now Wednesday, we do have an opportunity with a front coming in to see a couple strong to maybe a severe thunderstorm with wind gusts and some hail. See temperatures Wednesday will be in the 70s, 80s to even 90 in a couple spots.
Well, hi there, everybody, and a good Tuesday morning to you. I'm meteorologist Shannon O'Donnell. Out west, we've got some active weather pushing through Yellowstone. A lot of snow, in fact, potentially in that wonderful national park. We'll see mid-70s finally cooling off in Phoenix in a major fashion versus 64, even cooler around coastal San Francisco. Here comes this big front. Look at the snow showers outside of Salt Lake City and the Wasatch, and a drier day on tap for Seattle and Portland. And that's the scene from here.
The National Weather Desk.
Sunsets are often beautiful and mesmerizing. They can come in several shades of pinks and reds. But what exactly gives the sky that red color? Let's turn to meteorologist Erica Striva to find out.
Well, our sunsets recently have been even as vivid as some of those colorful trees across the area as they continue to change this time of the year. So why exactly has our sunset been orange and red? Well, it has to do with the sun setting on the horizon. The visible light from the sun actually has more length in the atmosphere to travel. So that visible light that it emits towards our eyes, the blues and even the purples get scattered on out. Even at times, some of the yellow does not make it to our eyes because it's scattered out by the atmosphere. So we're left with the oranges and reds as it continues to get lower in the sky. So as we get closer and closer to that sun, pretty much disappearing on the horizon, that's why you're going to get the most vivid colors at that point in time.
We'd love to share your weather content on the air. You can find us on all your favorite social media platforms. Just search the National Weather Desk. We'll be right back. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Janae Bowens. Make it a great Tuesday, and we'll see you right back here tomorrow.